Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere mai, and welcome to this week's episode of The Niche Cast. Life got in the way, so we missed the early in the week session, recording the variety show on the Patreon podcast. We just keep it moving, we take the L, and then we just bounce back with another podcast as soon as possible, and we just try to get back into the flow. These things happen, but we're always here trying to bounce back, and that's bit of early mindfulness there, Wildcard, just always bouncing back. No matter what happens, you can always show up the next day and have a crack as well, and that's what we are here to do. And we love a bit of Aotearoa sports, so we got some big Aotearoa sporting yarns to be had. Today, we're talking Blackcaps versus Australia. That ODI series is happening as we speak. Football Ferns are playing sneaky games at the moment, 2 wins, which is quite interesting as well. So 2 national team yarns, kōrero, and we've got Kiwi-NRL finals. We love a bit of NRL, we love a bit of rugby league, and we also love Aotearoa. So the fact that 16, shout out Joey Manu, I'm throwing him in this category, 16 of the 17 players who played for Aotearoa Kiwis against Tonga, they are playing finals footy / Joey Manu should be playing finals footy if he didn't have a niggly calf injury. Kieran Foran, the only player from that Kiwis team not playing finals footy right now this year. And of course, that was an Aotearoa Kiwis team with no Warriors, as we've discussed many times around here. Well, we love Aotearoa sport, and we've got some big topics on the agenda today. But to get the juices flowing, a little bit of swing the arm, swing the leg, warm-up mode here. What's a sneaky Aotearoa sport thing you've been pondering at the moment?
Yeah, well, pretty interesting one, just in light of some of that Football Ferns stuff as well, is just before the second Football Ferns game, I think it was just before, there was an announcement from Melbourne Victory that they'd re-signed Claudia Bunge, Football Ferns centre backs, pretty much a locked-on starter these days, certainly whenever Abby Erceg's not available, and has played 2 A-League seasons with the Victory and has won 2 championships. So pretty successful professional career so far. There was talk, there were rumors from the WSL in England that maybe a couple of those clubs were interested. The 2 that were mentioned were Brighton and Manchester United. Don't know what Manchester United have done in terms of buying centre backs, but I do know that Brighton bought a centre back named Rebecca Stott. So that might have been the one that they chose, went with Soddy instead of Bungie. But yeah, Claudia Bunge is returning to Melbourne Victory for next season. Potentially, I would suggest, probably odds on her last season in the A-League before she moves overseas. There's already been rumors, so you'd imagine another strong season will pretty much solidify those rumors into something else. See how that goes, but she pretty much plays every minute she's available for the Melbourne Victory as well, and is pretty excellent there. So another season of growth and development, and we'll see where she could go, because I think she is one player who does feel like a long, successful overseas professional career is definitely a possibility for Claudia Bunge, especially the way she settled in so quickly to the A-League. So that's a pretty funky one, I think, that I've been following. I guess I'll chuck it back to you. You go on yourself.
Got a couple.
Oh, yeah.
Ajaz Patel. He's on the Kiwi County Tour right now. He's picked up a gig with Glamorgan, and he's bowling as we speak. They are playing a game, both County Division 1 and Division 2. They're playing right now. Ajaz Patel is bowling in Division 2. I think he took a wicket in the first innings of that game. And this is obviously interesting for a variety of reasons, fairly obvious reasons. It's Ajaz Patel. Interesting 12 months for Ajaz Patel, starting with Mumbai Magic, coming into the summer, then with whatever the fuck happened against England over in England. Now he's back in England, and this is a very interesting phase for Ajaz Patel, just trying to get some confidence in the longer format before he returns to Aotearoa for Plunket Shield. Obviously, Will Young is also playing for Northamptonshire. He's skipper there. Don't think he put up a big score in their innings batting. I think they're I think he's dismissed in the second innings already, and that game is ongoing in Division 1. So 2 Test cricketers are playing Kiwi County Tour cricket while the Blackcaps are playing ODI cricket, which is quite interesting. Also, big weekend of NRL footy. Shout out to NRL Wahine, Women's NRL. Kiwis are in action there, but teams haven't been announced for the Farah Palmer Cup final. And I think we are going to see Caitlin Vahaakolo start for Auckland and Shante Poko starting for Canterbury. Vahaakolo is on the wing, usually for Auckland. Poko starts in the midfield, usually number 12, and they both played in NRLW earlier this year. So they played NRLW earlier this year, and I suspect they will both be starting in the final of the Farah Palmer Cup for Auckland and Canterbury, respectively. Amazing cross-code excellence that we see quite regularly for the Wahine. Like, they're just amazing athletes. And when you think about it, they're always juggling jobs. There's no equality in a lot of these sports. So we should always, like, this is something I've been thinking about. We should always push for equality, and that's option numero tahi. We can also just admire what these female athletes do. Like, most of them work jobs and play their sport at the highest level. And then in some cases, they're playing 2 sports at the highest level. And we can often whinge and moan about the lack of equality and resources there, but we can also celebrate them as amazing athletes and, to be honest, amazing people with what they're able to do, good role models, no dramas. So it's quite nice there. So shout out Caitlin Vahaakolo and Shante Poko for their cross-code excellence. Shout out to the Patreon whānau supporting the Niche Case all the time. Patreon.com/our Niche Case. We didn't do a Patreon podcast earlier this week, but we will bounce back next week, and that will come after the Blackcaps win a series against Australia. So we'll be wrapping up the ODI series between Blackcaps and Australia on our Patreon podcast. We show up there nearly every week for a podcast chatting about cricket, and it's also just a great way for you, the listener, the reader, the folks around Aotearoa who love Aotearoa as much as we do, to support the Niche Case. $1 a month is fine. It's all good. Whatever you want to share, however you want to support the Niche Case, join the Patreon whānau, patreon.com/our Niche Case. Our Niche Case. Join the Patreon whānau, and big up to all the members of the Patreon whānau for keeping this trucking along. Tomorrow's a Friday, so that means our email dispatch will come out as well. Big up to everyone subscribed to our email newsletter that comes out every Monday and Friday evening. So again, setting the menu. Monday evening, Niche Case information straight to your email inbox. Tuesday evening, variety show Patreon podcast. Thursday evening, Nichecast podcast. Friday evening, another email banger in your email inbox with Aotearoa sporting information. And of course, we're always writing about Aotearoa sport at theniche-case.com. Done a big NRL finals preview. Wildcards wrapped up the football. Ferns got the Flying Kiwis there as well. Also, low-key banger, I put the Kiwi-NRL spotlight on Paul Turner. Not quite Northland's finest. Probably like 3rd or 4th in the Northland Rugby League rankings right now. But he had a nice moment returning to Mount Smart Stadium for the Titans against the Warriors, scored a try, won that game. So shout out Paul Turner. Always interesting, insightful yarns. Well, that's our goal. That's our objective. And covering Aotearoa sport on our website, theniche-case.com. Check in every day. That's like the warm korowai blanket that is there for you all the time to read something about Aotearoa sport. Maybe find some Aotearoa music as well. Never know. Wildcard, apart from bouncing back and showing up the next day after taking an L, what's your mindfulness?
Well, what I had here was I was going to do a quote from from a poem by Rainer Maria Rilke. but which was just keep going, no feeling is final, because I thought that was pretty excellent and I saw that somewhere else. But then I thought, well, the poem's not even that long. It's like 12 lines. So I might as well just read the whole thing, because someone else might take something, something meaningful from a different line of that poem that I didn't exert otherwise. So this is called Go to the Limits of Your Longing by Rainer Maria Rilke. It goes, God speaks to each of us as he makes us, then walks with us silently out of the night. These are the words we dimly hear. You, sent out beyond your recall, go to the limits of your longing, embody me, flare up like a flame and make big shadows I can move in. Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final. Don't let yourself lose me. Nearby is the country they call life. You will know it by its seriousness. Give me your hand. ...
That's beautiful.
Yeah, extremely evocative, I think. That kind of
tear
thing.
to my eye.
Yeah.
A little shimmy to my heart. Shout out to the poet. Who was the poet there?
Rilke, Rainer Maria Rilke, German fella from, I would guess that poem was about 100 years old, I would say, probably.
And of course, very open-minded here at the Niche Cage. We're not necessarily talking about God, the Christian God. God is whoever you want it to
the
be.
white guy with the big beard and the robe sitting in a cloud. Yeah, not necessarily that one. But if that's your vision of it, then sure enough.
Yeah, it's whatever you want it to be. Maybe it's yourself. Maybe it's Tane Mahuta. Maybe it's Papatuanuku. Maybe it's Buddha. Maybe it's Muhammad. Whoever your God is, shout out to your God. Our God is Aotearoa. That's what we're here for. That's who we serve, as well as serving ourselves to the best of our abilities. Wildcard. Blackcaps lost to Australia first ODI. I actually want to shout you out because you've highlighted we've talked about this, and I have noted in our warm up of the podcast, I did lay out the idea that I just look at this batting lineup and I'm like, holy shit, this is fun. And so Finn Allen opened against the West Indies, but for this Australia series, it looks like they're going to open with Devon Conway and Martin Guptill. Then you got Kane Williamson, Tom Latham batting 4, Daryl Mitchell, Michael Bracewell, Jimmy Neesham. But that top 5, I love it. Some of the strokes Conway was playing were disgusting. Like, that dude is a freak. And I think this might have popped up in the West Indies series as well, especially when it was the full-strength T20 team. But you were talking about the bowling. And I think that's the same thing here against Australia. I'm looking at their top 5. I love it. Also, there's a lot of all-rounders that they're trying to get overs into, right? Like, that first ODI, you've got Bracewell and Neesham combining for the 5th bowling option. That doesn't feel as strong as it could be, but there's a lot of different bits and pieces they're trying to fit into this playing team. So my takeaway was kind of just the joy of watching that opening batting lineup bat, even though it was a bit slow. I think it was a tricky pitch. Both teams were new to those conditions. It was tricky, but it was just fun to watch those batters go about their mahi. What was something that you took away from that first up loss that folks can ponder as this game is happening Thursday night?
Yeah, that's a thought. People will be listening to this as the second game's actually going on. So I think we'll probably see fairly stable 11s from both teams for all 3 games. And that selection stuff is the thing that stuck out the most to me because, even when, because there's a question to say, like, and I understand both sides of the thing. Where you say, like, did they manage Trent Bolt's overs properly in that game, for example? Like, should they have brought him on earlier and tried to break that big partnership from who was it? Alex Carey and Cam Green, wasn't it? The big century partnership that got them right back into the game and ended up putting them in a winning position. Like, could they have brought Trent Bolt back earlier? Well, the risk is if you bowl him out early, you don't have him later on as well. And I don't know. I can see both sides of it. But regardless of the dilemma that Kane Williamson was in there as a captain, it's brought upon by the fact that, as you said, his 5th bowling option was Jimmy Neesham / Michael Bracewell, and he gave them both the spell around that time when people were wondering, should Trent Bolt have stayed on or should he have come back after that sort of thing? and didn't really go back to them again. I think Nisha might have had a short second spell, like 1 or 2 overs, but I can't recall off the top of my head. It didn't go back to Michael Bracewell though, having bowled him quite early. Like that's the issue. Like anything else about how do you manage Trent Boult? It's like, well, if you're expecting to win the game based on the 10 overs that of your best bowler, like sure that might be the case, is your best bowler after all, but at the same time, like if he's not getting much help, that's the issue. It's not like you waited too long to bring Trent Boult back. It's like, no, it's the other guys didn't step up when he was having a rest is the problem. And the squad wasn't really picked to have that kind of firepower. I mean, Lockie Ferguson was both unlucky, especially in his sort of second spell. Early on, I thought he was a bit erratic, which didn't help. But also probably should have come on earlier when Henry and Boult are bowling so well. He probably should have just gone straight to Ferguson rather than the spinners. But again, you're trying to manage the overs. You're trying to sneak out a couple overs from Michael Bracewell because you know you need to get a couple overs out of him. That's a problem of selection, not of bowling choices. So that was the thing. It's like the batting lineup is stacked. It's beautiful. It looks fantastic. It's such a good and I do think it's considerably improved as well by having Conway over Finn Allen. Like Finn Allen will get there down the line. At some point, he'll probably take over from Martin Guptill when Guptill retires. Like that seems like the obvious progression there or procession, whatever. But Devon Conway is clearly more reliable, especially in Australia against Australia. Like that's fine. Tom Latham's good enough to bat for. No dramas there. Daryl Mitchell's the man. You just got to get him in the team somehow. They did that. Still got Jimmy Neesham and Michael Bracewell to be closers at the end of the innings. You still got Mitchell Santner can swing a bat pretty handily. Tim Southey missed out on this 11 as well, although someone said his average in Australia and ODIs is like over 60 or something. So I think that's probably why it's not really his conditions there. Although a lot of Kiwi bowlers have probably similar problems if you look at their things and what did you do in Australia versus what did you do everywhere else. Not just Kiwi bowlers as well. I'd say probably most non-Australian international bowlers have similar yarns. But yeah, that was the thing that I felt. It's like they've stacked the batting lineup, maybe searching a little bit too hard for a solution which creates a problem in the bowling lineup if you don't think that Neesham and Bracewell can give you the 10 overs that you require. I mean, one thing that would help is if Daryl Mitchell was a bowler that they could rely upon or had any intention of using. I just don't know what the situation is there, but it seems like he's at least a disciplined enough guy who could just bowl some line and length. I don't know. If you had that, you have 3 bowlers combining for that 5th spot, you've got a bit more leeway because at this stage, if Michael Bracewell comes on and bowls 2 overs for 20 against Australia in this second ODI or something, you're going to have to bowl Jimmy Neesham 8. And Jimmy Neesham himself is, he takes wickets sometimes, but he also gets hit for runs sometimes. He's not the tidiest necessarily. So that's the risk that you take when that's your setup. So I don't know. It's tricky, but also the mitigating factor here is that looking at that and being like, yeah, love that batting lineup, don't love that bowling lineup. But at the same time, I look at the Australian team and it's like, well, they've done the exact same thing. Like they're expecting Glenn Maxwell to bowl a lot of overs based on this. Difference is Michael Bracewell bowled a few and didn't do anything and then didn't come back. Whereas Glenn Maxwell took, I think, 4 wickets as an off spinner who had I think it's him and Stoinis were the guys. And you combine their average it's like Stoinis average is about 44 or something. And Maxwell was about 55, I think, before that match. Maxwell's will have come down a bit slightly, unfortunately. But they did the same thing was the funny thing. He's like, I'm sitting here thinking I don't love this selection because I don't love the balance of the bowling lineup. And then I'm looking at Australia having done exactly the same thing. And in fact, their batting lineup was even stronger than ours for that because Glenn Maxwell coming in at 8 for Christ's sake. And the difference was not then in selections because it was effectively like for like. The difference is that their middle order had a massive partnership. And their fifth and a half bowling option took 4 wickets. Like that's why they won the game. It stopped Glenn Maxwell stopped us from getting. I think he got Kane Williamson was one of his wickets. He got a couple later on, like the middle order guys. that's why we didn't score another 20 or 30 runs. It's also why we didn't take a few more wickets. We didn't have someone who could do that same job. Like that was the difference in the first game, unfortunately, which sucks because you have a team like 5 for 44 or whatever it was. You sort of think you're probably in a winnable position, but unfortunately, I don't know. I've just experienced that. I'm sure you've got a few that spring to mind as well. Experienced that a few times against Australia where you think you've got them in trouble a few wickets early and then just some joker comes in, bloody Michael Bevan or Andy Bickle or a bloody Michael Hussey or someone just, someone comes in at 5 or 6, scores a big 50 or 100, swings the game completely back in Australia's thing. They're just never out of it, unfortunately. And it seems to be a little bit of a pattern. That's happened a few times. You can't take your foot off the throat against those guys, even at a time when maybe they're not as strong as they have been in the past. Still the case.
Yeah, everything you just described was Australia's was better, and that's fine.
Pretty much.
A lot of the immediate coverage gets caught up in minor details of one game, and first of all, it's a 3-game series, but also I just want to remind folks, bigger picture, New Zealand is basically already automatically qualified for the ODI World Cup in these Super League games. And they're preparing for a T20 World Cup. And they are doing those things while trying to figure out Michael Bracewell, right? Like while trying to figure out these combinations and all that stuff. So I just want to remind folks as the second game is happening, the Blackcaps are kind of in a state of flux. You can look at the contract situations, Trent Boult, Con de Gronholm, Jimmy Neesham. Shit is happening right now for the Blackcaps. Changes are happening in every sport, every pocket of life. Like things are changing, tectonic plates are shifting. And I just think like so many cricket fans will be thinking, what the fuck's Michael Bracewell doing? And they'll be thinking that after the test series, right? And then it comes back to another series here, not scoring many runs, not very economical or wicket taking with his bowling. That is because they're trying to figure things out. So I just want to remind the listener to just kind of flow with that, roll with that. Don't get caught up on the batting order. Don't get caught up on selection because the next series might be completely different and they're just trying to figure things out. It's obvious they like Michael Bracewell right now and they like their specific combination, but they're willing to change things and they're always willing to tinker and get better. And I think there's, as much as we love Trans-Tasman cricket and the entertainment of this, like it's on Sky Sports or it's on the telly right there. You get home from work, it's on all night. What the fuck is better than that? Blackcaps cricket from 4:20, shout out, to 10 p.m. Like it's amazing. But it's also part of a interesting stage for the Blackcaps that expands out to different formats and more important cricket moving forward. So yes, the Blackcaps want to win every game. Yes, they want to defeat Australia. Yes, we want to see the Blackcaps defeat Australia, but they're also tinkering. They're also building some stuff. And I think that is just something to keep in the back pocket as we roll through this series. At least we can watch the Blackcaps wildcard.
Yeah.
Because the football Ferns have played 2 games. They have had 2 good wins against Mexico and the Philippines. No one's been able to watch them to the best of my ability.
Well, the second game was streamed on NZ Football's YouTube, which was not the best quality. But after the Mexico game wasn't streamed at all or broadcast or anything like that, I wasn't about to complain too much about the lack of like professional clarity on the feed for that Philippines game. I was just like, well, as long as I can see it, because I'm shocked by the fact that in 2022 it's possible for a senior international football team to play a game and like a proper 4 caps. It's not like a unofficial warm-up game. It's like actual 4 caps kind of, India Page Riley's Football Ferns debut it was. No one could see it. Like, it's like her family couldn't actually watch the game or anything like that. It's kind of strange how in this like day and age that can still be the case. How do you not at least get a little cheeky stream out of it? I have no idea.
Well, so what happened? You watched the second game by the sounds of it, and you would have done a fair amount of research as to how that first game played out. So, how are you feeling about the Football Ferns coming off two good wins against apparently weaker teams? We've discussed this many times before. The Football Ferns have only been measured against the best teams in the world. And now we're seeing them play far more competitive games. They've got some wins, bit of confidence, bit of razzle dazzle maybe. How are you feeling about the Football Ferns after this 2-game stretch?
Well, the last time they won 2 games in a row against teams that weren't from Oceania was, I believe, in 2013. So it's nearly a decade since they've actually done this. Like, not just had a nice win, but gone back to back. The Philippines game was especially interesting because I couldn't find a long enough like list of results to check it up. But they came from behind to win that game. They were 1-0 down at halftime. Silly little goal they conceded just before the break. Had to score twice in the second half. 84th minute winner against Mexico, CJ Bott. 82nd minute winner, I think it was, against Philippines from Ali Riley. So pushing to the final whistle as well was a nice thing. But the fact they had to come from behind to beat Philippines too, like I couldn't find the list of when goals had been scored or conceded in previous games, but I know they haven't actually won a game in which they're conceded at all since 2017. I think Cyprus Cup against Hungary, it was 3-1, and I think the Hungary goal was a consolation. So I don't think they came from behind in that game to win it. I think they just conceded late. But that, like, I think 11 games they've won in the time since. Every time they'd won, they'd had to keep a clean sheet to win. Like, they had to be flawless defensively in order to win games. Here, they had a big mistake. Like, Aaron Naylor probably should have saved that one. They also shouldn't have conceded possession in the midfield or been so open in transition for the ball over the top either. Like, it was a sloppy sort of 15 seconds of play, and it cost them a goal. In recent times, and a lot of that is because they've been playing against better teams that are hard to match up against. But in recent times, one mistake like that is enough to stop the Football Ferns from being able to win games because they just don't have the attacking firepower to make up for conceding first. Here it wasn't. Like, I don't even think they played that well against Philippines is the thing. And part of that is because they were missing a lot of players. You know, Rhea Percival's out with the knee injury and ACL an extended amount of time. She won't be back till what? She did it in February, so she might be back around Christmas time, hopefully. Probably more likely sort of February range. But it should be back before the World Cup, which is the important thing. Annalie Longo also did an ACL in the Mexico game that nobody could see. At this stage, like, that's kind of devastating because there's not enough time to recover before the World Cup now, and she'd just come back out of the international hiatus. Great performances against Norway and Wales, got herself back onto not just into the squad, but kind of being like, I might be your best starting midfielder kind of areas. Well, she's going to miss out on the World Cup now from that injury, unfortunately. Daisy Cleverley was out injured. Who else was it? Rebecca Stott was out injured. A few other like squaddies like Emma Ralston and Ashley Ward out injured. Katie Bowen and Abby Urseg not available. And then when you get to the tour, not only does Longo suffer the serious injury, but also you've got Hannah Wilkinson and Grace Jale didn't play either games because they got over there and then caught COVID. Malia Steinmetz caught COVID in between the 2 games. So she played the first actually coming on for Longo when she got injured, but wasn't available for the second game. So they really were quite short-handed as well. Like, this is not their first 11. They had to dip into the depth bag a fair bit and still won 2 games. And again, like, they were playing the kind of teams they would expect to be able to beat if they perform well. But A, they weren't at capacity in terms of the players they were able to pick. And B, I don't know what happened in the Mexico game. Can't really speak to that. But from the Philippines game, some sloppy stuff. You know, the touches weren't particularly great, especially in the first half. I think second half was a lot better, definitely. But particularly in the first half, like, there were some sloppy touches. There was some, passes from defense giving the ball away. Again, like, these are the kind of things. If the Football Ferns are missing a couple key starters, if the Football Ferns don't play to their potential, if the Football Ferns concede the first goal, normally that's it for them having a chance of winning those games. Wasn't the case here. the level of opposition does need to be taken into some account, but Philippines have qualified for the World Cup next year. Mexico didn't, so that's something. But Mexico's a big football nation, from what I understand. Like, their women's football league is going from strength to strength. They just had some trouble with their manager and stuff in the qualifying, and a few disappointing results cost them. But and in a relatively strong confederation as well. Philippines, coached by Alan Stajic, the former Australian coach. He's a very good coach. You could see they were well organized. A lot of their players are dual nationals, so many of them have come through the American system, for example. So, you know, they're very well drilled players, and good technical players, and like not a team to be underrated. Like, these are games the Football Ferns went in hoping to win, but they're also not games that were going to be freebies. And as I say, like, things didn't go entirely in the Football Fern. Like, not all the, ducks were in a row. Fernies still won. I think that's good progress. Like, I think it's exactly what we wanted to see from them. And a couple wins on the trot is just, good areas there. It's signs of progress. It's ahead of the World Cup, where they're going to, when that draw gets made, they're going to be the top seed because they're a co-host. They're going to get a team of the caliber of Philippines or Mexico as the fourth seeded team in their group. The most winnable opportunity they're ever going to get at a World Cup. Haven't won a game at a World Cup before. This is exactly the kind of strength of team that they're going to be playing in that game. Just had a couple examples where they won both of them, and they won both of them despite some trying circumstances. Not to mention the heat in California as well. Imagine would have been a factor at this time of year too. So, good areas.
You mentioned a lot of players missing and unlucky injuries and stuff like that happening mid-series. Who were the players that impressed you and took their opportunities to push for first 11 kind of gigs, or even just World Cup selection from those two games?
Well, the winning goal against Philippines was scored by Captain Ellie Riley. So in her 147th cap, which takes her past Abby Erceg for the second most all time, only Rhea Percival's ahead of her. So obviously doesn't affect her, only her second goal for the Football Ferns though. But obviously she was, a locked on starter, let alone captain of the squad. But her namesake, India Paige Riley, recently transferred over from Australian, eligibility back to her home nation kind of thing. And like, the thing about that is we don't have a lot. She plays for Fortuna Hurring in Denmark, who played Champions League a couple of years ago, had Champions League qualifiers just recently, lost out, wasn't ideal, but she plays at a high level at club stuff in Europe. There are a lot of Kiwi players who you can say that about. It's like probably more than ever. Not a lot of them are strikers or wingers. Indy Riley she has actually been playing a bit more wing back for Fortuna Hurring this season, but she is, a winger attacking player by trade. And in Ellie Riley's goal, the move started because Indy Riley gets the ball out wide, sort of right wing, one-on-one with a defender, drops the shoulder, cuts back the other way, gets to the byline, cuts it back to Paige Satchel. Her shot's blocked, but Ellie Riley pounces. The whole move started because India Paige Riley was able to beat a defender one-on-one. And I'm looking at that being like, who else in Fern squads recently is capable of doing that? Like, there's a lot of good passes, a lot of good technical players, some good finishers in there too, and some good physical players, and all sorts. Like, everyone's got their, their traits and stuff that have taken them to this level. You don't play international football accidentally, but here's someone who could beat a player one-on-one. The only other player in the squad I would say that about for this current squad, who I would trust like one-on-one, get to the byline, get in the cross, is probably Paige Satchel, and her crossing is not the best. Like, she's very quick off it. She's super fast, so she can get to the line. Not always the best, like with the final product. She's still, she's still figuring that stuff out. She's made big strides in recent times, but she's the only other player I would say is kind of in that bag. So that just shows what an immense coup it was to be able to get Indy Riley to switch back to Aotearoa, because we don't really have a player of her mold, and she wasn't flawless through these games or anything like that. She was actually the one who lost the ball in midfield leading up to the Philippines goal. Like, there's plenty of mistakes there. She's a young player too. She's younger than Paige Satchel, in fact. But just that one instance of like, we need a goal. We're trying to win. It's 1-1. It's a game we feel like we're dominating. How are we going to like break this team down? Good defensive team. The goalkeepers made a couple nice saves. How do we do it? Little bit of individual flair. Beat a defender 1-on-1. She did that. She provided that at a key moment, 82nd minute of the game. Nobody else is really capable of doing that at that time. So I think that's massive, and that's something that absolutely probably like a glowing positive from that tour.
Who's a comparison out of the All Whites crop? Not necessarily the uh, changing eligibility back or to Aotearoa. Like I've got Ronaldo Mulatalo behind me, so he might be an interesting
Right.
comparison on the rugby league side. But just from a pure football perspective, who does she remind you of from the All Whites guys?
Well, Joey Champness was the first one that sprung to mind as someone who's very skillful and is also a right winger, and also swapped allegiances from Australia back to New Zealand, where he was born. Probably less like Indy Riley. All her family is from New Zealand, and she grew up here till she was about 11 or 12. Joe Champness, which was born here, I think he has one Kiwi parent, so it's not quite as severe, but enough that he was, willing and passionate to do that. But I don't think that quite fits because he's a little bit more flashy stepovers and stuff. Indy Riley's more direct, but I don't know. Trying to think of other wingers. The All Whites don't really operate with wingers to quite the same extent. I was going to say Logan Rogerson, but he's more Paige Satchel, like just burning pace. I'm not sure. Because she's also quite a good defensive player. Because as I say, she's played wing back a fair bit. So maybe I should be saying someone like a Nico Kerwin or something. I don't know. He's not really a beater defender either. But maybe that's the point. Maybe that's the point, is that she doesn't have a direct comparison because she's a different kind of player than we normally develop, men's or women's footy. So, yeah, maybe that's the point.
When you mentioned the defender wrinkle, I thought of Kakache.
Yeah, that's not a bad a sort of mirror image, like the right-sided version, because Kakache's both footed, but he's a left-sided player, left-footed. Indy Riley's fairly clearly right-sided player, but she did play a bit of left wing. She certainly can do that. So maybe that's not a bad shout, to be fair.
But just in the like the basic package of a solid defender who can play make moving forward. Like Kakache just seems
the
like
attacking version of Kakache. Yeah,
Kakache
can't do what he does defensively, but yeah.
Yeah, and that's because he's a straight up left back, whereas you're saying she plays wing back for her club team. So it's like, but they're both solid defenders by the sounds of it, with playmaking ability moving forward. But I think more interesting, as you mentioned, that the All Whites don't necessarily play with straight up wingers. They've got a different style to a different kind of different playing style to a different style of player that they have within their squad. Moving into Kiwi-NRL finals footy here, wildcard, and I thought the best way to lay this out was in order of Kiwi-NRL funk. So we're going to build into the funkiest Kiwi-NRL finals games. Of course, 2 of these games are elimination games, and 2 are whatever they call them, top 4 games where the winner moves on, takes a week off, the loser then plays the winner of the other games. First and fourth in my Kiwi-NRL funky rankings is the Roosters versus Rabbitohs. Unfortunately, we did have Joseph Manu, calf injury, and shout out Satili Tuponuia, Maris Saints Jr. He was ruled out for the season a few weeks ago as well. Fantastic season, fantastic player. I reckon Tuponuia is better than Olakau'atu as a Tongan edge forward. Olakau'atu has a lot of power, a lot of skill, but Tuponuia is fantastic. Fantastic around the footy, energy, intent, and he's in a fantastic system like the Roosters as well. So I do think Manu can get back pretty quickly. He seems like a bit of a freak. The Roosters are quite good with their recovery. Let's just say that. So I think Manu, and it was interesting, he was playing with like a slight calf strain. or so like he had some sort of calf niggle before that game, and that tells you all you need to know about Joey Manu. Like he could have said to the Roosters, look, I've got a niggly injury, don't want to play this week, but he kept playing, kind of to his own detriment, but that sets up his recovery. Because if the Roosters go deep into the finals, Joey Manu will be doing literally anything possible to get back, and that sets up the World Cup. I'm fairly confident Joey Manu will be fit for the World Cup just on like what we know about him as a professional athlete and the Roosters recovery systems and all that good stuff. Roosters still have Jared Waerea-Hargreaves and Siosiwa Tokiaho in their forward pack. Obviously, Tokiaho, Tongan veteran, Otara Scorpions Jr. Bit of a resurgence lately alongside Waerea-Hargreaves. And they, like statistically, you can look at their work this season and their last few seasons as the best footy of their careers. So that's interesting. And they're both, I think they're both starting props against the Rabbitohs. Yeah, so that's quite fun for the Roosters. Roosters numbers are down though without Manu and Tupanui. And I just remembered what happened late last year. Latrell Mitchell, fantastic player and a fantastic bloke, he smoked Joey Manu in the face. And then Joey Manu was ruled out for the rest of the season ahead of finals, I think. But that definitely happened.
And so was Latrell Mitchell for a different
exactly.
reason.
So this year, second to last game of the season, Joey Manu calf tear. Like it's rough for him. Like, I feel sorry for him, especially with the footy he was doing, what he did at fullback for the Aotearoa Kiwi. So it is a bummer. But there's every time Waerea-Hargreaves runs it straight is fun. And Siosiwa Tokiaho, I think it's his last year with the Roosters. He's off to Catalan's Dragons. So all the Docos can rally behind Tokiaho as well. And they're coming up against the Rabbitohs, who have a bit of Cody Nikorima, Saliva Havili. Both on the bench, both as bench utilities. But we know Havili is quite a good small middle forward, so he's probably going to play through the middle. Nikorima can cover half and cover hooker. So this is fourth on my Kiwi-NRL Funk rankings. It is on Sunday, obviously rallying behind the Roosters, and because I do want to see Manu kind of get another crack, so I'd love to see the Roosters go deep. But they've only got the two starting props, and then your Rabbitohs have two bench utilities.
Yeah, I did read somewhere that Manu is not like no one thinks this injury will keep him out for the World Cup or anything like that. Ideally, you want to be back a fair bit before that, though. Not just for finals reasons, but also just to have a bit of a run in for the lead into the World Cup. International teams tend to need a little bit of preparation before a big tournament. But that's like promising enough. It's just bad timing that it happens to happen like you're out for a month or something right as the finals kind of begin. And yeah, finals footy being what it is, I think you're right. I think there is a possibility the Roosters win a couple games, go deeper. He'd play if he's at 70% or something like that. He'd probably say he'd play if he's at 30%, but your coaches might not necessarily risk a dude on one leg. But that is a chance, and that is something that's actually, I don't know, that's quite an exciting thing, because at the season he's had, he deserved to just be completely unleashed for finals footy. And I had forgotten that it was face mashed in a year ago, and the same thing, missed out on a run. Can't feel too sorry for a dude who's won at least one premiership. He might have won two, eh?
Yeah, they went back to back.
Yeah, they did too, and he would have been there both times. So whether or not he's won three is the question. But yeah, he's had his moments in finals footy before, but it is a bit of a shame because he's career best form, and hopefully he can make that miracle recovery in time. And it does seem like the Roosters are the only team. If you're thinking from the Kiwi-NRL perspective, the Roosters are kind of the only team to cheer for here. don't see the it's Havili and Nikorima aren't exactly like the A-listers of the thing, but I don't know. I've still got that stat in my head from what you said at the start about 16 of the 17 players, including Manu, are playing finals footy from that Aotearoa Kiwis team earlier in the year, which is still buzzy to me to think. I didn't realize that till you said it, and I thought, well, that's a really good sign, and then B, also it is a pattern of like it's a pattern of, well, it's a pattern of picking players who are in form as much as anything, and the players who are in form probably playing for the better teams, because the better you play, the better your team plays, the better teammates around you plays. That probably adds up. It also does put another light on the fact that there weren't any Warriors in that 17, but if there were, then that stat wouldn't be true. So, um, yeah, we'll talk about a few more of those guys, and no doubt over the next 3 games. What's your next one on the list?
Next is the late game on Saturday, Cowboys versus Sharks, or Sharks versus Cowboys. So it will be in Cronulla. One player who was not in that Kiwis team, but he was part of the Kiwis squad, was Griffin Niami. Still open to whether it's actually Neem or Niami. Like,
You know what? I was watching a movie, an old English movie a few weeks ago, and they were rolling. It's like back in the day when they would put the credits at the start of the movie rather at the end of the movie, and they're rolling through like credits over the top, and there was a guy called Neem, who was just, I don't know what he was, like the gaffer or something, the guy holding the boom mic. I have no idea what his job was, but I just saw the name pop up, said so and so Neem, and it was very obviously like an old crusty Englishman from half a century ago or whatever, which it did put the first doubt in my mind about the pronunciation, is maybe he just has like a English great grandfather or something, and it is actually Neem. But
yeah, it's either super Anglo-Saxon and it's
yeah,
Neem, or it is Māori and it's Niami.
yeah,
At least, and like Neem Niami, he might be a Paul Tito type of Māori, you know? He's a special Māori. He's quite ginger, got the freckles, like plenty of mana there, but he also might just be straight up half Pakia, half Palangi, and then it's Neem. So it is, we have poked fun at that, but do want to say, I don't know for sure, whereas someone like Tapani or Talatawa Mone, we know
to pine and a moan.
to Pine and Amone, we do know how the Australian dialect
Yeah,
influences those names. So that is to say, young Griff, he wasn't in the Kiwis team, but he was in the Kiwis squad, and he is in this Cowboys team again. As I noted, Cowboys lost a game where he dropped out of the top 17 recently, comes back into the top 17, Cowboys win. Obviously, the Cowboys, they also have Petahiku at centre and Jason Taumalolo, the South Auckland Rhinoceros, in their team as well. But I'm thinking a lot about the impact of Neem and what that actually looks like. Because he comes off the bench, he might play 25 minutes, and obviously I'm biased towards the Kiwi-NRL players, so I'm trying to like create his value, right? Yeah, sure, he might have 8 runs for 80 meters, efficient stuff, not necessarily influential to the Cowboys winning the game. But I do think there is some sort of value in what Neem does off the bench. Every tackle is a monster hit. Every run he gets through, he pokes through the line, quick play the ball. He runs good lines as well, so he can score a try or get through the defensive line. And he's just a big lump of a lad who moves well. So I do think there is some sort of Neem influence coming off the bench that I would love to see in this game, because he's going to be, usually Griffin Neem can bully the opposition bench forwards, right? Like, it's quite an interest, and when you put it that way, and especially if you're coming up against like a bottom 8 club, if it's Hamlin Uele coming off the bench or Griffin Neem coming off the bench against the Tigers or the Knights or the Warriors or the Titans, they are better than the opposition's bench forwards. So they bully the opposition bench forwards. And what was happening a lot during the season was Taumalolo goes off, Neem comes on. So you're just continuing the 10 meters per run type of mahi against bench forwards. So they're fucked. So that is, I don't think you're going to see that necessarily in finals footy, but I do think there is some sort of mystical influence that Neem has just with his presence and his work in the middle. And interestingly, Jermaine Tanoa-Brown has started games this season. He's been on the bench for a lot of games, but he's outside the top 17 this week, and I think that is because this is a full-strength Cowboys forward pack, and Neen needs to be part of that. So shout out to him. Petahiku played when the Cowboys their only game against the Sharks this season, but Siosepha Talakai did not play. And they will line up on the same edge, I believe. Petahiku, right centre, Talakai, left centre. Obviously, a very interesting matchup there. Talakai, very powerful, nuggety sort of runner. Petahiku, not known as one of the best defending centres, but I think there is stuff the Cowboys can do to help Hiku. Hiku will get a body onto Talakai. Talakai might bump him off, but then you just need the cover defense sweeping that up type of stuff. And I'd actually flip it around. Like, what is Talakai going to do against Petahiku defensively? Because Petahiku's got all the skills. He's got good footwork, got a good fend, offload, he can kick, he can throw a cutout pass if he needs to. Petahiku can do everything he wants to do with the footy. And there's a lot of buzz and hype around Siosepha Talakai, but can Talakai control Petahiku's skill set? I think that's going to be interesting as well. Britton Nakora on the edge for the Sharks, he's fantastic. Like, he's just a monster. And then Braden Hamlin-Uele is an inch. I don't really know what to expect from him because his minutes are all over the show. Sometimes he starts, sometimes he comes off the bench. Sometimes he's having 5 runs for 50 meters. Other times he's having 10 runs for 80 meters. Like, it's quite all over the place. But alongside Ronaldo Mulitalo, who I view as the best winger in the NRL. Maybe a hot take, but I love Ronaldo Mulitalo. You've got 3 players on either team from Aotearoa. Ronaldo Mulitalo, Ellerslie Eagles Jr., even though he's from Otara. Britton Nakora is from Tauranga. Hamlin-Uele is a Glenora Bears Jr. in Auckland. Petahiku, Manuel Marlins Jr. Taumalolo Papakura Otahu Jr. and Griffin Neem, Suburbs Rugby League in Greymouth. So you've got 3 players who in either team, these are quite plucky, not teams folks expected to be top 4 right now. And a lot of that is like built upon some Kiwi-NRL foundations. So this is an interesting game, and it's got more than enough Kiwi-NRL juice to keep folks interested. I kind of lean towards the Sharks.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about that, and I don't know, because you're right. I think they are 2 teams that people certainly at the start of the season wouldn't have predicted to be finishing second or third on the ladder. But you can also see how they did it quite clearly. Like, it's not a mystery how they finished where they did. Like, good, solid teams don't really have too many weaknesses there. And over the course of a NRL season, that is, consistency is going to do a lot. And if you've got a couple of players, which both these teams do, like a couple of players who can take you above and beyond, a couple of things that set you apart from other teams, like characteristics, I don't know, they're both dangerous teams. And of course, this is one of those qualifying finals as well, isn't it? So it's not whoever loses isn't out. You get another week. I don't know. It's fun fact from I can't try to think who I would predict, but I just don't know. But fun fact from that, Griffin Neem / Niame / Young Griff. Isn't Young Griff a Game of Thrones character?
Correct.
But not in from the book, not in the show, I think.
I think it's from the Duncan Egg.
Oh, maybe that's it. I have read that book too. At least from a book then.
Or it's something to do with the the Aegon, what's it called?
Yeah.
Like the fake takeover, fake Aegon.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because I can remember them in the last book. There's young Griff and there's someone else that's with like old Griff, I don't know. But they're with a bunch of sellswords on a boat sailing over to Westeros, and that, like, where that book ends. And I think that whole thing just wasn't in the TV show at all. They just iced it from the You got to save some time at some places, I suppose. But yeah, Neem slash Niame slash Young. I think Young Griff will do. Young Griff and Peter Hiku, same amount of tries this season. Both got 4 tries this season. The difference is that Peter Hiku also has 7 try assists, whereas Young Griff has, I think, 2. I think I looked at, but same amount of try. And Peter Hiku's actually played a couple more games as well, so it's a funky little one there. But maybe that's a little characteristic of Peter Hiku being a guy who is extremely good at flicking an offload and stuff like that. So maybe not necessarily the finisher in their backline moves. Also, probably a good example of the Cowboys being a go forward up the middle kind of team as well. That a bench forward is coming on and scoring a few tries. So, but yeah, so Hiku and Young Griff, both 4 tries each. Also, Young Griff finals debut, isn't it? So that's also something to think about. The old the first playoffs match kind of thing in your career is always a big occasion worth celebrating. He won't be the only one of these Kiwi fellas, I would imagine, who's in that category either, along with a few grizzled playoff finals veterans.
And interestingly, the 18th man for that Kiwis test against Tonga was Jordan Ricky. If that Kiwis test was being played this week, I think Young Griff would be 18th man, because Ricky and the Broncos, they slip and slid, whereas Young Griff, he's just stayed true with the Cowboys, and like they were both selected for the Kiwis squad based on 2 teams that were competing well. Ricky and the Broncos fell off, Young Griff kept trucking. So I think if that test was to be played, Young Griff would take Ricky's spot as 18th man. But there's not too much space in the top 17, though, wildcard, because my next game, and basically I'm working from Sunday back. So we're going backwards. Roosters versus Rabbitohs is Sunday. Cowboys versus Sharks is late Saturday. Storm versus Raiders is the early Saturday game. And this is fantastic. Rugby League. Storm, obviously we know Bromwich brothers, Jerome Hughes, Asafa Solomona, Brandon Smith, they're all there. Jesse Bromwich and Asafa Solomona starting, Brandon Smith coming off the bench. Doesn't get any better than that, unless you add Joseph Tapine and the Raiders to that equation. So obviously that's a fantastic battle through the middle of the field. Joseph Tapine coming up against Jesse Bromwich and Asafa Solomona. Asafa Solomona is from Wellington. Joseph Tapine is from Wellington. Jerome Hughes is from Wellington. So that's an interesting wrinkle. Obviously, the Bromwich brothers, they're off to Redcliffe next season. Brandon Smith is off to Roosters. And Brandon Smith going to the Roosters will mean that he plays hooker. Starting hooker, probably 80 minutes hooker type of stuff. Right now, he's playing middle forward. And there's a bit of a enjoy it while it lasts vibe with the Melbourne Storm, considering the Bromwich brothers will be cornerstones of the Redcliffe team, and then Brandon Smith probably won't play this middle forward type role ever again, maybe. But those are all big Donnies. That's basically 3, 4, 5 top 17 Kiwis forwards in one game, which is fantastic. And I don't know, like Chuck and Corey Harawira-Naera, Northlander, he played 80 minutes on an edge last week with Elliot Whitehead resting. So I don't think he's going to play 80 minutes on an edge this week because he's coming off the bench. But he does offer maybe a late shift.
Yeah, it happens.
How do we know your job is to decapitate Kenny Bromwich type of thing? I don't know, Kiwi-NRL crime.
Well, Nelson Asafa Solomon has been the guy trying to decapitate people lately, so
I find it very strange, because you know what I was saying last week about how Wairea Hargreaves is like a alpha dog, on a field full of alpha dogs. I'm fully with the protecting the head and all that shit, but at some point, this is rugby league, and Asafa Solomona is trying to bully NRL players. So think about that.
He's not picking on a kid walking down the street and taking their candy, sort of thing.
Well, he kind of did that against Wade Egan, but
Well,
um, he's a monster. He's a beast.
yeah, he's huge. He, to some extent, can't help it. You know.
Yeah. Like if you try tackle him, there's a high chance you're getting hurt from nothing he does, let alone anything he might do. But I also think I wrote about this in the finals thing. Basically, over the last 5 rounds, his minutes have gone up. So if Asafa Solomona might play usually 30 to 40 minutes, there's a limited amount of runs that you can see him doing and a limited amount of tackles. Recently, there's been all this noise about Asafa Solomona, and he's playing more minutes. So it just feels like people are watching him more.
Yeah.
So there's more reason to complain about him, where it's just like he's just trying to dominate a very physical sport. And that's fine because he is the biggest dude on the field. So he should fucking dominate the sport, right? Like, I'm all for his niggly shit. I don't even give a shit about the Wade Egan stuff. Like, my love for Asafa Solomona and the Melbourne Storm, the Wellington connection, I don't give a fuck. Like, he's the man. And there was a game like last few seasons. I do remember this. I have clipped this video. Asafa Solomona versus Joseph Tarpon, a bit of a scrap in a scrum. Obviously, Australians didn't care, but this is one of the most epic Kiwi-NRL moments of my lifetime. Two dudes from Wellington, two of the best middle forwards in the world, having a scrap at a scrum. Like, it was amazing. All of which is to say, wildcard, watch out for Matthew Tomoko.
Hey, just re-signed too, I saw.
Yep. And he's coming up against Justin Olam.
Hmm. Tough task.
So, Peter Hiku versus Siosifa Talakai, that's going to be interesting. Equally, if not more interesting, Matthew Tomoko versus Justin Olam. So, Matthew Tomoko defending against Justin Olam brings in Kenny Bromwich. Because Kenny Bromwich, he's either going to be running around the back of a decoy, a la Billy Slater, or Kenny Bromwich is throwing that pass. So edge forward, throwing out the back behind a decoy. Not many edge forwards do that. Like, what does Britton Nakora do? Runs over people. What does Isaiah Papali'i do? Runs over people. What does Hudson Young do? He runs over people. Like, a lot of edge forwards, they just have like a run off my hip. Maybe we'll like put you onto a half so you can get an offload out. Maybe just get a quick play the ball so we can go short side after that. Kenny Bromwich is like a focal point of the Melbourne Storm's attack on their left edge, which usually involves a bit of Munster and a bit of Olam. So a lot of the time when Olam's in space or he's one-on-one, Kenny Bromwich has given him the footy. And it's those little subtle things that I love about Kenny Bromwich and the Melbourne Storm, which makes it harder for Matt Tomoko. He's got to try to stop Justin Olam, and there will be a lot of shape, a lot of set plays designed to isolate Matthew Tomoko against Olam, or Olam to get on the outside of Tomoko. But Tomoko is a fantastic young centre from Auckland. Talked a lot about him, came up through Auckland Grammar first 15. He's a league junior as well. Now he's here playing finals footy for the Canberra Raiders. And this is a fantastic matchup. Two very good Kiwi-NRL organisations. This one is second on my Kiwi-NRL rankings.
Considering everything you just said there, and that there's a game better than that is a pretty good indication of what we're in for over the weekend. Because that game is, I mean, Storm and Raiders is also, that is one of the elimination games too, isn't it? So Nelly versus Tapane, only one man can be left standing at the end of it, whether they fight or not. But yeah, but that's just that's a blockbuster game. And you've got Panthers Eels ranked ahead of that, so I'm pretty excited.
Panthers versus Eels. We got this one's the Friday night. This one is juicy, wildcard. This one is fantastic. Boosted. Like, there has been a fresh wrinkle this year because Moses Leota and Scott Sorensen lined up for the Kiwis. So, I don't know. I've talked a bit in recent podcasts about the intensity and aggression that these forward packs have, and every game in finals footy, you will see higher intensity, harder collisions, more effort, more big blokes trying to intimidate other big blokes and smash other big blokes and smash little blokes, and kicking early and then putting shots on as the opposition gets off their try line. Like, that shit flies off the Richter scale in finals footy. Panthers, like, I've usually thrown up Fisher Harris as the leader of that. That makes a lot of sense. Like, Fisher Harris, maybe a notch below Joseph Tapine this year, but he's right there with Asafa Solomona, Jesse Bromwich, Wade Hargreaves. Like, in a Kiwis forward pack, I think this season Tapine is the top dog, and then those other dudes are right there, international caliber players, among the best in the NRL. Moses Leota does almost as much as Fisher Harris as far as physicality, smashing blokes, making meters, and anything you see. So what you're going to see is you're going to see Isaiah Yeo, first receiver, passing to Nathan Cleary or Jerome Luai. That's going to happen most sets, at least twice, I'd say. Set of 6, Isaiah Yeo, first receiver, at least twice. So then you're like, Isaiah Yeo, he's fantastic. He's passing the ball. He's going to take a run every so often as well. He's going to do his job. Anytime Isaiah Yeo's passing the ball, it's probably because Fisher Harris or Moses Leota took a tough run, landed on their stomach, got a quick play of the ball, bang, you're gone. And it just, everything about the Panthers requires those two lads in the middle playing very direct, running hard and running straight. So then the subtlety of their attack can be flexed. And Scott Sorensen's part of that because he's got, you can't say leg speed, like he's just fast, right? Like, he doesn't have great leg speed. He's just fast. Scott Sorensen is fast and powerful. So he's part of that as well. But the starting props, and this is like Moses Leota has developed into this role. Fisher Harris has been doing this for the last 4 or 5 seasons. Moses Leota has developed into like a 1B to Fisher Harris's 1A, which I think is extremely impressive. And Moses Leota poured his soul out for the Kiwis as well. So mad respect to him for that. They come up against the Eels, who we've talked plenty of times about this season as one of the funkiest Kiwi-NRL teams. As much as I like the Panthers wildcard, Fisher Harris, Leota, Sorensen, I also love the Eels and what they're doing with their Kiwi-NRL players. And I said this about the Storm. Bromwich brothers off to Redcliffe, Brandon Smith off to Roosters, Isaiah Papali's off to the Tigers next season, Maratini Okore's off to the Warriors next season. So we got to enjoy this group of Eels. Dylan Brown in the halves, and also Makahisi Makatoa from New Plymouth. He is coming off the bench as well. And they're fantastic players. I kind of feel myself repeating a lot of ideas with the Eels wildcard. So maybe if you've got any questions or little notes you want to throw that I can bounce off just to express my love for them.
Yeah, I don't know. This is another one of them qualifying finals. So again, there's a second life for whoever loses. It's first versus fourth. So Eels not necessarily expected to turn it up here, but I have a sneaking suspicion about them going into these finals. I don't know. It feels like they've been a team that's been there or thereabouts for 3 or 4 years. And as you say, like, there's a few Kiwi dudes who have been a big part of that, guys who have gone up and up and up. And this might be will be, given a couple of those, just as far as at least the Kiwi core is concerned. We're with like the last swing of it for them. Feels like they haven't quite hit their potential in a playoffs run, in a sort of finals footy. I think there was one year they made the semi-final, wasn't there? But they're even then, like, I don't know, storied franchise. It feels like this maybe this is the year that things align for them, and if that does happen, you're going to have a fair selection of dudes, not the least of which being Dylan Brown, who are eligible for the Kiwis and who are going to be playing, like, who are going to need to be extremely influential for them in order to make a playoff run. I wouldn't be shocked if they turn the Panthers up this weekend. I'm just going to chuck that one out there.
So I think what you're referring to is, like, I've got this didn't plant the seed, but it reminded me of the physicality of finals footy was when the Eels lost to the Panthers last season. And it was a brutal game. And the Eels matched the Panthers physically, which is no easy task, right, in finals footy. But they lost the game. So they matched the physicality, but they didn't have the nous or skill or execution to win the game. The Eels have the same physicality. They're going to show up with the same physicality. They're going to smash the Panthers. Panthers are going to smash them. What's different? Dylan Brown's had his best year. So I think that is going to be a key defining feature. And like, we think about the Eels, they've been good. They haven't quite got over the hump in recent years. That whole time, Dylan Brown has been getting better. So I think what you're saying is true, that I don't know if the Eels can beat the Panthers, but I think if Dylan Brown's playing his best footy, those chances go way up. And Dylan Brown probably feel like he's going to be on the left edge, which will line him up against Nathan Cleary for the Panthers. And obviously Cleary's the best halfback in the game, kicking, running, tackling. He's got it all. Dylan Brown runs 100 meters, doesn't miss many tackles. That is the perfect recipe for a half in finals footy. And I'm very interested how that translates to a big game against the Panthers. And you can narrow it down to which of the four halves in this game plays the best. Jerome Luai, Nathan Cleary, Dylan Brown, Mitchell Moses. What's if Dylan Brown is the best half in this game?
Then my prediction might come true then if that's the case. Because it's not just that he's been steadily improving. It's like what you're saying about like maybe in recent years, the Eels have had the physicality, they've had all the foundations and just maybe lacked a bit of flash on top. That's kind of specifically what Dylan Brown has added to his game, is like try assists and the creative type of things that give you that spark, that edge in these kind of games that can be the difference, because it might well be a game that finishes like 12-10 or something like that. Like it also might be a game that finishes like 36-32, but it's more likely when you get to the final stuff, scorelines tend to cramp up a little bit. The fine margins become more decisive, and just having that extra bit of pizzazz, in your halves, playing alongside, old mate Mitchell Moses as well, doesn't go astray. He's got plenty of that.
But what you're saying,
yeah,
the Eels and Dylan Brown are aligned, because
yeah.
Dylan Brown, he was doing his physical job that whole time as a 20-year-old, as a 21-year-old.
Immediately on the scene as a really good defender.
And he's running the ball, he's making tackles. So that translates to good final stuff. But to get over the hump, there needs to be an extra layer or a wrinkle. So it's amazing what he's already done. But ahead of a World Cup, a little bit of razzle-dazzle. I think it all stems from just running. And it's the same with Jerome Hughes. So Dylan Brown can just get more try assists by running more, because he gets through the line. So if he gets through the line and he gets an offload or a pass to a player in support, that's more try assists. It's not necessarily getting the ball and throwing a cutout pass to the winger. So that's why running is really important for Jerome Hughes and Dylan Brown, because so much comes off a break they make or a quick play of the ball or scattering defenders. And especially for Dylan Brown, like, he's got way more try assists, not necessarily because he's got more finesse or better vision. It might just be because he's more confident running the footy.
Yeah, and if like he's not a dude who kicks successively, he has kicked a little bit more this year, hasn't he? Because there was that spell as well when Moses was out injured a couple months ago. So, but he's not necessarily like, he's not the first guy they're going to go to on the final play kind of thing, which is also where a lot of halves get try assists from, isn't it? It's just kick to the corner and or grub her in behind kind of thing. Um, which says like if his game hasn't changed specifically, it's just got like the numbers just keep getting better and better. That also says a lot about a dude's progress, or it's like he hasn't tactically started doing anything crazily different in order for like the try assists or whatever to boost. It is just you better sense of the game management, these kind of things that come with experience and just the willingness and the confidence to be like, yeah, I can do this and I can do this better than you can stop me, sort of thing. I just like I said about the Eels at the start, it feels like there is a bit of an alignment coming into this finals. I might be completely wrong, but I do think there's like dark horse potential about dark horse about the Eels. I don't know those animal metaphors quite work, but there's something in there. Metaphorically, we'll keep it on the metaphorical sense. The Eels are dark horses somehow.
Well, they're swimming up the estuary, murky estuary waters. They're eels. They're staying away from the eel traps and the eelers. They're swimming up the estuary out of sight, out of mind. But I can see them defeating the Panthers, and if they don't defeat the Panthers, I can see them swinging back around to win the next game as well. And as we're saying, any Eels victory or success will come with significant Kiwi-NRL contributions, and that is the Nichecast for this week. We'll be back regular schedule next week. Watch out for the email dispatch tomorrow, Friday evening. Otherwise, raise your mana, stay beautiful, kia kaha, church.